3 bone-chilling true summer vacation nightmares that haunt you forever when summer rolls around. People yearn for sun-soaked adventures, ice cream under blue skies, and laughter echoing along sandy beaches. But behind those carefree images, dark tales lurk. Tales that chill to the bone, stories that linger in nightmares long after the sun sets. One such story involves a family trip that should have been a paradise but turned into pure terror when night fell and the shadows grew long. Picture this. The Peterson family arrives at a quaint cabin nestled deep in the woods. The air smells of pine, and the sun glows golden, casting long shadows that dance on the ground. But as day morphs into night, a thick fog rolls in, wrapping around the trees like a shroud. The kids giggle nervously, squinting into the darkness as it swallows the path leading back to their car. It should be a magical night of stargazing, but something feels off, like the trees are watching, whispering secrets of the past. Voices echo from the woods. Not just animal sounds, but whispers, human-like echoes that make your skin crawl. Just as they gather around the fire pit, roasting marshmallows, a sudden snap of a twig brings all heads to a turn. A chill runs down their spines like icy fingers gripping their hearts. Did you hear that? Sarah, the oldest, breathes out, her eyes wide like saucers. Everyone nods, but they can't bring themselves to speak. Then, a looming figure appears between the trees, just on the edge of the flickering firelight. A shadowy, indistinct shape, it sways gently like a wraith. A lump forms in each throat. Fear grips them tight as they squint, desperate to discern friend from foe. The figure seems to blend into the night, a haunting visage that leaves them paralyzed in fright. Just then, they hear the distinct sound of footsteps from the cabin behind them. Wasn't the door locked? Then came a creak, heavy breaths echoing, drawing near. Sarah's heart races. She feels an overwhelming urge to look back. Her fingers tremble, and visions of horror flash in her mind. What if someone or something was lurking just out of sight, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the night deepens, dread wraps around them tighter than a vice. Their hands are clammy, hearts racing as they can't shake the feeling of being watched. Suddenly, the figure vanishes. Has it retreated into the darkness, or something worse? Sweaty palms slick against the fire pit. They swap terrified glances, raw fear reflected in their eyes. And just when they think it's over, the power goes out. Complete darkness envelopes them, a suffocating void filled only with the sound of their panicked breathing. As they huddle together, debating whether to flee or face the unknown, a faint glow emerges from the cabin window behind them, a light they hadn't noticed before, flickering wildly. What waits for them inside, and will they regret finding out? The flickering light from the cabin window drew them in, a siren's call beckoning them closer despite the fear gnawing at their insides. Sarah, eyes wide and glimmering with reluctance, exchanged glances with her younger brother, Jake. His small hands clutched at her side, seeking comfort, but all she felt was a knot tightening in her stomach. Maybe we should just go back to the car, Jake whispered, voice shaky. His fingers dug into her arm, grounding himself in the chaos of uncertainty. No, we can't leave Mom and Dad, Sarah replied, every word laced with mounting dread. A wave of maternal instinct swept through her, urging her forward. They had to ensure their parents were safe. Taking a deep breath, Sarah led the way toward the cabin, Jake trailing behind her like a lost pup. Each step felt heavy, as if the ground were trying to hold them back. The fog slithered around their ankles, whispering shadows ready to snatch them away. The cabin loomed larger as they approached, but the door remained ominously ajar, creaking as if in protest against their intrusion. Inside, the air was stale and cold, a stark contrast to the warmth of the fire pit outside. The light flickered erratically, revealing an interior that looked untouched by time, yet strangely eerie. Dust motes danced in the narrow beam as they stepped farther in, and the hairs on the back of their necks stood on end. Pictures lined the walls, old portraits with eyes that seemed to follow them, trapped in a moment that felt too still, too watchful. "Mom, Dad," Sarah called out, her voice almost swallowed by the oppressive silence. Each syllable echoed back to her, as if mocking her courage. They shuffled through the living room, the floorboards creaking beneath their feet like a low whisper of warning. Then, they heard a soft, muffled cry from somewhere deeper in the cabin. It was unmistakable. Mom's voice. Panic surged through Sarah like a lightning bolt. "This way," she whispered urgently, heading toward the sound. Jake hesitated, his wide eyes darting back to the door. "Sarah, what if we shouldn't?" He pleaded, but she pressed on, dread hanging in the air like a storm cloud. They followed the sound into a narrow hallway lined with shadows that seemed to pulse and breathe. The cry grew louder, more desperate. "Please help me," it twisted like a knife in their hearts, thrumming with urgent unease. With each step, a dreadful realization settled in their bones, the chilling thought that someone or something was hiding in the shadows, waiting for them to take just one more step. They paused outside a closed door at the end of the hallway. Straining to catch their breath, Sarah reached for the handle, her mind racing with all the possible horrors waiting on the other side. "Are you ready?" Jake's voice trembled, a pulse of fear radiating between them. "No," she murmured, and yet she twisted the handle and pushed the door open. Darkness loomed within, seeming to swallow the very light around them. As Sarah peered inside, a flash of movement darted across her vision, a figure that didn't belong. Before she could comprehend it, the door suddenly slammed shut behind them, cutting off their escape. Trapped. Panic surged, breath quickening to the rhythm of their racing hearts. The floor creaked again, but this time, it wasn't just the house. There were footsteps, drawing closer from the depths of the cabin. "Who is there?" she called out, voice shaking but laced with defiance. No answer came, just the sound of heavy breathing, the kind that feels all too human, yet utterly wrong. As she turned to Jake, ready to pull him closer, the flickering light dimmed to black, plunging them into an abyss of terror. Every shadow felt alive. Every sound morphed into a threat. Just then, the whisper returned, more clear and chilling than ever, wrapping around them like a snake. "You shouldn't have come here." What awaited them in the darkness? Would they too become part of the haunted stories whispered amongst the trees? Jake's breath hitched, and the weight of the darkness pressed against them like a physical force. "Sarah, I can't see." His voice quivered, the terror breaking through his efforts to stay calm. "Just hold on to me," she whispered, but her own heart thundered in her chest, drowning out any rational thoughts. She reached out, trying to find the wall, but only met the cold, hard air. The world had pulled a cruel trick, and they were left lost in a void. Then came the sound. A slow scraping, like fingers clawing at the wooden floor, echoing from the corner of the room. Goosebumps prickled her skin, and she shivered despite the suffocating heat of fear wrapping around her. "Sarah, I'm scared." Jake's voice, shaky and small, felt like a tether to reality. Before she could comfort him, the breathing intensified. It was close, too close. A low growl reverberated through the shadows, chilling her to the bone. Panic clawed at her throat. "Stay close," she demanded, trying to steel her own wobbly resolve. Just then, a beam of light sliced through the darkness, illuminating part of the room. Sarah blinked against the brightness and gasped. In that fleeting moment, she saw it. A figure hunched in the corner, its limbs twisted at unnatural angles. Its eyes shone with a predatory glint, a haunting reflection of hunger. "Jake," she breathlessly warned, but he was already backing away, trembling, his small frame nearly folding in on itself. With instinctual urgency, Sarah grabbed her brother's arm, pulling him closer as she retreated. They could not linger here. The transparent terror they faced was palpable, the growing shadow guiding its otherworldly presence toward them like an eager predator. As they stumbled away from the shadow, Sarah's heart raced with conflicting thoughts. "We have to find a way out," she hissed, scanning the room for an escape. But the darkness seemed to shift, swallowing the light and shrouding any hope of an exit. Suddenly, the growling stopped. Frigid silence wrapped around them, smothering their whispers. The sound had been replaced by a low, echoing cackle that sent a shiver racing down Sarah's spine. You think you can escape? The voice was raspy, mocking, teetering between human and something far worse. The cabin quivered with an unknown energy, as if the walls themselves were alive and watching. They were enclosed in a trap crafted by something far beyond their grasp, a haunting that demanded their terror. "Listen to me, Jake," she said urgently, kneeling to look into her brother's teary eyes. "We have to stick together, no matter what happens." He nodded, his small hands squeezing hers until his knuckles turned white. They edged toward the door through the thick darkness. Sarah took a deep breath, ready to fling it open, but an invisible weight pressed against her, as if the house itself was trying to hold them captive. "Let us take another path," she whispered, pulling away from the door. They raced towards the far side of the room, where the shadows looked less oppressive. In that moment of passion and fear, she whispered, "We'll find Mom and Dad. I promise." But inside, doubts gnawed away at her steely resolve. The truth felt hauntingly close, and yet insurmountably distant. Just as they turned to continue their escape, the door at the end of the hallway burst open. A figure emerged, silhouetted against the dim light. It was too tall, too deformed, its limbs twisting in impossibly unnatural directions. "You should not have come here," it bellowed, a mournful wail chasing after them. In sheer panic, Sarah grabbed Jake's hand and ran with all her strength. They were running into the unknown. But the cabin wasn't finished with them yet. Where would they escape? Was the world outside any better than the horror lurking within these walls? They raced through the hall, heartbeats thrumming in their ears, desperate to escape the monster's twisted wails. Sarah pulled Jake close, glancing back to see the figure stagger forward, its movements jerky and disjointed, like it was fighting against the mocking laughter that echoed around them. Each laugh curled around them, whispering how hopeless their flight was, but they couldn't stop. They wouldn't stop. "Keep running," she urged, her voice cracking as they darted past rooms shrouded in blackness. Shadows loomed at the edges, but they didn't dare look back. Desperate, Sarah yanked open a door, the heavy wood groaning in protest. It led to a narrow staircase spiraling down into inky darkness. "This way," she shouted, dragging Jake behind her as they plunged into the abyss. Each step was lit by the echoed growl of the creature that had been watching, stalking from the shadows. The air thickened, pressing against their skin, and they stumbled half-blind down the stairs, dread knitting tight in Sarah's chest. They reached the bottom, breathless, clutching each other. "What now?" Jake whimpered, his wide eyes reflecting sheer terror. The low growl reverberated agonizingly close, a reminder of the horror still pursuing them. "Let us find a way out," Sarah replied, scanning the dimly lit corridor that branched off from the stairs. A faint light glimmered ahead, but she felt as if something was watching from the edges of her vision, dark spots shifting just out of sight. "Maybe," she hesitated, turning to face Jake. "Maybe we can find a window?" His brow furrowed, worry plastered across his features. Their parents hadn't made it this far, and every second dragged them deeper into a nightmare. "What if we go the other way?" he asked softly. "No." Urgency seeped into Sarah's voice. "That S where the monster is." But the tendrils of uncertainty curled around her heart. They couldn't backtrack. That would just lead them into the maw of whatever that thing was. They needed to keep moving. "Seem on," she urged, propelling them towards the light. Each step forward felt like they were wading through molasses. Jake stumbled, nearly falling as the creature's growl crescendoed behind them, forcing them into a blind sprint. They reached the end of the corridor, where the light shimmered like a beacon. Sarah skidded to a halt. It was a door, a flimsy, old wooden door, splintered at the edges. She yanked it open, revealing a clouded moonlight bathing a small clearing outside the cabin. The soothing glow felt like a reprieve, laced with the hope for freedom. But as she stepped out, Sarah's heart sank. The forest was alive with whispers, the trees looming like ancient guardians, grim and watchful. "We need to go," she urged, but fear crept back when Jake hesitated at the threshold, holding onto the doorframe. "What if it follows us, Sarah?" he stammered, eyes darting back into the dark. "We can't let it trap us inside," she countered, panic threading her voice. They couldn't pause. They already lingered too long. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them. The sound echoed through the night, a cruel mockery to their efforts. "Sarah!" Jake screamed, and she turned just in time to see the silhouette the creature emerged from the cabin, illuminated by the moonlight. Its twisted features, a grotesque mimicry of humanity, sent icy fingers of fear clawing down her spine. The landscape shifted as if the ground began to sway beneath them. The terror of being hunted clamped around her chest like a vice. "Run!" Sarah shouted, grabbing Jake's hand and sprinting into the thicket. Branches clawed at them. The underbrush pulled at their legs as they dashed deeper into the echoing woods. The howls behind them were relentless, a symphony of torment that urged them forward. But no matter how fast they ran, the world around them felt like a twisted prison, a labyrinth constructed by shadows. What if there's no escape? Jake gasped, so tired, despair creeping into his voice. Sarah's stomach dropped. That terrifying thought echoed in her own mind. "Don't say that. We will find a way out," she cried, trying to sound brave for him, even as fear gnawed at her insides. As they hurtled through the forest, the moon shone bright above, but it was obscured by swirling clouds that seemed to pulse with darkness. Finally, they stumbled into a small clearing, breathless and wide-eyed. But the moment was short-lived. The growling rose again, sharper, more threatening, as a shadow descended from above. "Not again," Sarah whispered, fear clawing at her throat like a wild beast hunting its prey. A flicker of hope flickered in her gut. There had to be a way to confront this. "Jake, listen, we need to stand our ground." But just as she clutched her brother's hand tighter, the ground beneath them trembled, and they fell to their knees. The forest filled with that same mocking laughter, wrapping around them until it consumed what little courage they had left. Would they survive the night? Would darkness swallow them whole? What lay ahead was terrifyingly uncertain. And in the heart of those twisted woods, the scream of the damned echoed. The clearing narrowed as shadows twisted around the trunks of ancient trees, closing in on Sarah and Jake like a tightening noose. Panic surged in Sarah's chest as the growl grew louder, a promise of imminent doom creeping closer. She pulled Jake to his feet, muscles screaming as they scrambled to distance themselves from whatever hunted them. "Sarah, we can't just stand here," he pleaded, his voice trembling. "I know," she retorted, breathless, scanning the periphery for an escape. The mocking laughter echoed through the woods, each peal drawing nearer, morphing into haunting whispers that threatened to shatter her resolve. "Over there," she gasped, pointing to a thicket of bushes that looked denser. "We can hide." They raced towards the thick foliage, but just as they dove into the underbrush, the growl morphed into a chilling silence. A shadow loomed at the edge of the clearing, and Sarah held her breath, heart racing. What if it had seen them? The silence was suffocating. Seconds stretched, each one laced with palpable fear. Then, the creature's grotesque face broke through the branches, its eyes glowing like embers. Sarah's blood ran cold. It seemed to be drinking in the darkness around it, the slight tilting of its head a mockery of their hiding place. "We need to go," she whispered fiercely, pulling Jake gently but firmly toward the opposite side of the thicket. They crept forward, limbs trembling. Every crack of a branch beneath their weight felt like a gunshot in the eerie silence. Suddenly, a low howl erupted from behind them. The creature had sensed their movement. "Run!" Sarah yelled, bolting forward, adrenaline igniting every nerve ending in her body. They burst out from the bush, sprinting as fast as they could. Every heartbeat resonated with fear, pounding in her ears like a war drum. Behind them, branches snapped like gunfire, the monster pursuing them with relentless fury. They dashed through the greedily grasping foliage, the branches slapping at their faces, the ground uneven beneath their feet. Moments later, they stumbled into another clearing, wider and more open. "Where do we go now?" Jake panted, panic coursing through his veins as he scanned the darkness around them. "They must have a way out. There has to be a place to hide," Sarah responded, scanning frantically for anything that might provide cover or a chance to fight back. But the truth loomed like the massive trees above. They were trapped in this nightmare, prey in an endless hunt. Just then, glimmers of old fading lights flickered in the distance, abandoned lanterns, or possibly a cabin. Hope ignited within her. "There," she pointed, clutching Jake's hand tighter, pulling him toward the faint glow. They ran, piercing through the darkness. But the laughter returned, shrill and mocking. It echoed in the trees around them, chilling Sarah to the bone. Please, please, Jake's whisper faltered, fear creeping back into his voice with every step. The shadows seemed only to grow longer, heavier, threatening to swallow them whole. The glowing lights flickered again, and just as they reached a decrepit old cabin, a loud crash of thunder resounded overhead. Instinctively, they dove for the door, throwing it open just as a torrential downpour began to pelt the ground behind them. The scent of damp wood and mildew filled the air as they tumbled inside, slamming the door shut with shaking hands. Heart racing, Sarah leaned against it, listening closely. The laughter faded slightly, but the low growl continued to seep through the cracks, reminding them they weren't safe yet. Did we lose it? Jake whispered, wide-eyed, staring up at Sarah, desperate for reassurance. She began, but suddenly a series of low, throaty thumps began to reverberate through the cabin walls. The shadows inside writhed, and something cold and sinister was coming for them. Sarah Jake's voice trembled, laced with terror, pulling her back to the reality that they might not have any more time. Without warning, a chilling wind swept through the room, extinguishing the feeble glow of the lanterns, plunging them into darkness. She felt a rush of icy breath on her neck. Sarah's stomach twisted with betrayal. Hope dashed as she realized they were not alone in the cabin. Something lurked in the shadows, and it was waiting, as if savoring their fear. What was inside with them? Would they find the strength to fight, or would it be the end? Time seemed to run out, leaving them gasping in the void. The darkness swallowed them whole. Each breath Sarah took felt heavy, stifled by the thick air. She forced herself to listen, straining for any sounds beyond her panicked heartbeat. The cold draft prickled at her skin, a foreboding reminder that they were not alone. Jake, she whispered, lifting a trembling hand to her chest, feeling the rapid thump beneath her fingers. Stay close to me. The pressure of his presence beside her was a fragile comfort. They shuffled backwards, instinctively putting distance between themselves and the door. A chilling scratch echoed from the far corner, like claws scraping against wood, sending an icy shiver down her spine. What is that? Jake's voice quivered, a thread of despair threading through his words. I don't know. Her voice barely broke the suffocating silence. But we can't let it find us. Just then, a flash of lightning illuminated the room, revealing a wall lined with peeling wallpaper, cobwebs dancing like wraiths in the corners. The light was gone as soon as it came, but in that brief moment, she saw it as silhouettes slinking through the darkness, low and unforgiving. Get down, Sarah hissed, pulling Jake toward the floor. They ducked behind a cracked, old table, barely managing to conceal themselves. The low growl intensified, vibrating through the wooden beams above them. Sarah clamped her jaw shut, forcing down the scream that threatened to erupt. Every nerve ending was alive with fear, and she fought back the urge to bolt anything but that. What are we going to do? Jake's wide eyes searched hers, desperation flooding his voice. Just wait, she murmured, trying to keep her breathing steady. If they stayed still, maybe the creature would pass them by. Seconds felt like hours, taut and expectant. But the stillness was deceptive. Suddenly, a heavy thud reverberated across the floor. Whatever was in the cabin had shifted, drawing nearer. Crack. A piece of the roof gave way, sending a shower of debris to the floor. The silence shattered, and panic surged again. What was out there? What was hunting them? And then, a voice broke through the tension, low and raspy. It echoed like a haunting lullaby. Little ones, come out to play. Sarah's stomach dropped. The voice was mockingly sweet, dripping with malice. What do we do? Jake whimpered, clawing at her sleeve as if trying to anchor himself to her. We need to distract it. Just a bit, she breathed, scanning the room. In the darkness, her thoughts raced back to the lanterns they had seen outside. If they could somehow grab one before she could finish that thought, the shadows shifted again, and the creature's form emerged. It was massive, hulking, with rippling muscles that glistened in the faint illumination of a moonbeam. Its eyes burned bright, two hot coals glaring through the murky shadow, and its mouth twisted into a grotesque grin. Come out, it taunted, circling the room as if taking pleasure in their terror. Now, Sarah hissed, her heart pounding against her ribs. She clutched a heavy broken chair leg, adrenaline pushing her forward. On 3, 1, 2, 3. They bolted from their hiding place, Sarah sprinting toward the door, her mind tuning out the world save for the glimmer of hope ahead. But the instant they moved, the creature lunged. "Run!" she shouted, feeling Jake at her heels as they raced towards the door. Just as they reached for the handle, the creature swiped at them, nails scraping the wall just inches away. The cabin groaned, as if it were alive, closing in around them. "Sarah!" Jake cried, his grip slipping in the chaos. "Keep moving," she yelled back, yanking open the door and bursting into the night. The rain had turned the ground into a slippery mess, but they pressed on, feet pounding against the wet earth as they veered into the woods again. The howls behind them smashed into the nighttime, a symphony of fear, but in the distance, flickers of light emerged once more. Another cabin? Could they find sanctuary again? Hope surged even as shadows pooled around their feet. As they navigated the trees, something dawned upon Sarah. The laughter faded, but the creature was not gone. It was playing with them, and it was relishing every moment. What awaited them in the depths of the night? Would they emerge unscathed, or would the predator finally catch its prey? The forest held its breath, waiting for truths hidden in the shadows. Branches clawed at their faces as they sprinted deeper into the forest. Cold raindrops stung their skin, mingling with the scent of wet earth and panic that hung heavily in the air. Sarah's lungs burned, but she pushed herself onward, every heartbeat urging her to escape whatever lurked behind them. "Do you see it?" Jake gasped, glancing over his shoulder, desperation etched on his face. "No," she shouted back, knowing that glancing back could cost them precious seconds. "Just focus on getting to the lights." They could see the faint glow now, pulsing like a beacon of hope, guiding them. But would it be safety or another trap set by the creature that haunted the shadows? Ahead, the shadows twisted and whispered amongst themselves. An oppressive silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Suddenly, a sharp howl cut through the night, a sound that fired adrenaline straight into Sarah's veins. How much further? Jake's voice trembled, fear rising as they stumbled over roots and rocks. "Just a little more. Keep moving," she urged, fighting down the rising tide of dread. But with every step, the laughter returned, taunting them, a sinister echo that curled around their thoughts. "Little ones," it cooed, voice weaving through the trees like a serpent. "Don't you want to play?" The hairs on Sarah's neck stood on end. They couldn't stop now. She pushed Jake, nearly tripping over her own feet, urging him on. "You just have to keep going." But just then, Jake halted abruptly. In the gleam of their destination, something emerged from the thick blackness, another figure, lithe and menacing, blocking the path to the lights. Its eyes glowed an otherworldly amber, a double set of teeth grinning down at them, a horrific reflection of the beast they had left behind. "Jake!" Sarah screamed, panic surging anew. "Back! We have to go back." But it was too late. From somewhere behind them, the original creature had caught up, its heavy breaths echoing around them as it surrounded their position. One front claw pointed skyward, a grotesque invitation to their impending doom. The night grew colder, more dangerous, a quilt stitched from terror. With no other choice, Sarah yanked on Jake's arm and turned, sprinting away from the monstrous shape slowly gliding toward them. The flickering lights became a distant memory, snuffed out by the encroaching darkness. An impenetrable blackness swallowed them whole, as heartbeats thundered and shadows lengthened. "Do you think we can outrun it?" Jake gasped, his breath visible in the chill. "Not if we don't stick together," Sarah shouted, back against a tree, pulling him in close as they desperately searched for a way out. Just as panic overwhelmed them, plunging Sarah into a screaming silence, she saw it a flicker near the ground. She dropped to her knees, feeling around the soggy leaves, her fingers brushing against something smooth and cold. A lantern, its glass cracked, but intact. Hope surged through her. "We need to light this. Now," she cried, urgency igniting her movements. She rummaged through her pockets for anything useful, wishing for the familiar comfort of a match or a lighter. But the noise drew nearer. Scratching, snarling. The shadows rolled with anticipation, their terrible presence suffocating the small bit of light she clutched. "Quick!" Jake shouted, pulling at her sleeve, trying to urge her out of the tree line. "We can't stay here." Fear surged through her veins. Darkness whisked around them, and urgent whispers swirled in the air. Would they find a way to ignite the lantern, or would the darkness consume them before they could push beyond the shadowed embrace? As the growls came ever closer, ready to pounce, Sarah made a choice. With a determination forged in terror, she struck the lantern's base against the ground, hoping for a spark. Would fire mirror life against this abomination, or merely light up a horrific end? The possibilities hung in the air as the flickering glow served one last purpose, illuminating the horrors hidden inside the woods. What lay in that light? Would they find salvation, or something even worse? The lantern clattered against the damp earth, sending a frantic jolt through Sarah's hands. As the small flame flickered to life, it sputtered before bursting forth, casting a warm glow that pushed back the encroaching darkness. For a moment, the chill lifted. Hope danced in the amber light. Jake's face flickered into relief, and then terror washed over him anew as the shadows writhed and twisted, revealing the very creatures they had been fleeing. The beast that had chased them was now joined by the lithe figure, a grotesque smirk twisting its elongated features under the flickering flame. "Do you see, little ones?" the creature said, its voice a sickening melody. "We're here to play." Rising from the underbrush, forms emerged, their distorted silhouettes blocking any chance of escape. Sarah's heart thudded against her ribs, each beat a reminder of their precarious situation. She gripped the lantern tighter, the warmth almost comforting now, but it paled against the terror looming just a few feet away. "Back to the darkness you go," Sarah shouted desperately, the bravado mixing with panic. "We're not afraid of you." The laughter bubbled around them, echoing through the trees like a morbid chorus. The creatures seemed to bend closer, captivated by her defiance. But Sarah felt a gnawing dread in her gut. She turned to Jake, searching for reassurance, but he was pale and trembling. "Can we use the lantern as a weapon?" he asked, eyes flickering nervously between Sarah and the advancing figures. Maybe she hesitated, aware of the danger lurking within their grasp. If they were too bold, it could mean their end. But they had little choice: advance or perish. "Keep it steady. If they come too close, I'll swing it," Sarah said, her voice steady, though it wavered at the edges. As if sensing their resolve, the lead creature charged, its form grotesque and horrifying. Sarah lifted the lantern high, swinging it like a club. The flickering flames splashed light against the scene, illuminating the gnashing teeth and the sharp claws that glinted under the glow. "Let us go. Move," Jake screamed, and with that, they dashed into the night, the lantern illuminating a path through the fog of fear. They only had moments. The figures hesitated, then rose as one, drawn taut as springs ready to snap. Shadows clawed at Sarah's heels, and she felt the breath of the creature behind her, a hot, rancid gust that made her stomach churn. "Faster!" yelled Jake, his footsteps slapping against the wet ground, urging her on. They wove through the trees, their escape becoming a frantic blur. Renewed adrenaline coursed through Sarah as she ran. They glimpsed a narrow opening ahead, a break in the underbrush that promised a way out. Hope flared again, bright and powerful. She pushed herself harder, lunging forward. But then, chaos exploded around them. The ground shook with a rumble as something massive crashed through the trees, branches snapping like twigs. "What is that?" Jake gasped, horror painted across his face. A shadow larger than anything they'd seen emerged, a monstrous figure, towering over them, a twisted silhouette against the night. It roared, the sound curling deep within Sarah's chest, rooting her in place. "Run!" she screamed as the world spiraled into a cacophony of snarls and echoes. They veered into the opening, a narrow path they desperately hoped led to salvation. But glancing behind, Sarah saw the creatures spilling into the light. A mix of desperation and terror gripped her heart as they vanished into the unknown underneath the roots and darkness. What if the lantern was not enough? What if safety was only an illusion leading them closer to an even darker fate? A sharp scream echoed in the darkness, slicing through the heavy air. It wasn't theirs. The terrible realization settled like ice in their veins. They weren't alone in their escape. Sarah's mind raced. What horror awaited them if they didn't act fast? Would they face the monster behind, or the shadow creeping up? As silence blanketed the forest again, they pressed deeper into the trees, fear twisting within them. But hidden in the darkness, somewhere a second, unseen predator lurked. Will it find them first? Or would they discover a way to fight back? The last flicker of the lantern trembled as the shadows closed in once more. Branches whipped against Sarah's face, sharp and biting as they plunged deeper into the forest. Jake's breath came in ragged bursts next to her, matching the panic clawing at her throat. They stumbled forward, feet slipping on the muddy earth as they navigated the treacherous terrain. "Sarah, what if they catch us?" Jake's voice wavered, fear etched in the lines of his pale face, illuminated briefly by the flickering lantern. "We keep moving," she shot back, gritting her teeth. She needed to be strong for both of them. The rhythmic sound of their hurried footsteps was swallowed by the heavy silence that surrounded them. Each rustle of leaves caused Sarah to jump, her heart pounding so hard she feared it might burst. Suddenly, the lantern flickered again, almost as if it were responding to her rising fear. Just as she thought it would fail, the flames steadied, pushing back the shadows that hung heavily around them. "Stay close, Jake." They pushed on, adrenaline surging through their veins. The darkness seemed to contort and twist, alive with unseen threats. But through the branches, flickering images danced in and out of view, muffled whispers buzzing at the edges of her hearing that sent chills racing up her spine. "Do you hear that?" Sarah asked, pausing for a moment, straining to grasp the source of the unsettling whispers. "Maybe it's just the trees," Jake replied, but his eyes darted nervously, betraying him. "No, it's like—" She hesitated, searching for the right word, a voice. As if summoned by her fear, the whispers grew stronger. "Play with us, join us." The ghastly giggles dripped like poison into the stillness. Sarah tightened her grip on the lantern, a sense of dread settling into her chest like stone. "We have to keep moving now." But as they hurried forward, a new noise broke through the sound of soft shuffling behind them. Panic surged in Sarah's gut, radiating like fire. "Come on, run. We can't let them catch us." Footsteps thundered closer, and the shadows poured out from the trees, gloom mingling with the sickening laughter. She risked a glance back, eyes wide with terror. The creatures were closing in, crawling through the underbrush like demented wolves. "Sarah!" Jake shouted, his voice cracking with fear. "Keep going." She felt the heat of their breath, a rancid stench that clung to the air. An unearthly growl erupted from the dark behind them. For crashing through branches like an unstoppable force, they burst from the shadows into what appeared to be a clearing, moonlight spilling down, illuminating a circle of strange stones rising from the ground. The glow felt enchanting, almost like a beam of safety, but something about it screamed danger. "We need to find cover," Jake shouted, glancing back at the shadows creeping from the tree-line. Sarah turned to the stones, unsure whether to approach them or avoid them, but something compelled her forward. "Wait." "We have to." The ground trembled as a thunderous roar erupted from the darkness. The figure from before, massive and menacing, stepped into the clearing, blocking any chance of retreat. It towered over them, eyes gleaming with a predatory delight. Locked in a trance, pulled closer by the flickering lantern, Sarah felt that icy grip of dread once more. What do they want? It was an echo of a thought more than a question. She couldn't shake the feeling that the stones, the whispers, were all part of this horrific game, a cruel invitation. "Dare to play with your fears?" The creature taunted, its voice dripping with malice. Suddenly the atmosphere shifted. The laughter faded into silence, and the forest held its breath, as if waiting for a cue. Sarah realized the truth in that twisted moment. They were not just fleeing, they were the main act in a deeply sinister performance. Her heart raced as the looming shadows stretched toward them. "Jake, what do we do?" Before she could brace herself, the air filled with a chilling sound. From the ground, emerging from the stones, tiny figures began to raise their heads, a chorus of hollow, lifeless eyes staring straight at them, drawn into the terrifying spectacle. Playtime is only beginning. What had they awakened? The woods spun around them, the world narrowing as the lantern flickered, light dancing frantically against the dark tide. With the weight of dread crushing down, Sarah pulled Jake closer, searching for answers amid the chaos. Would they succumb to the darkness or find a way to turn the game against their monstrous pursuers? As the shadows lunged forward, she had to make a choice: fight or fall into the void. The moment had come, and every heartbeat echoed that chilling question. Would they be swallowed whole, or would it be them who escaped with the dawn? The lantern's flickering light spread over the monstrous figures encircling Sarah and Jake, but beneath it, dread coiled tighter. The faces of twisted shadows stared at them hungry, expectant. Playtime is only beginning echoed ominously through the clearing. With every heartbeat, Sarah felt time slip between her fingers. "We have to fight back, Jake," she whispered fiercely. But her resolve was wavering, shadows siphoning her courage. She gripped the lantern tightly, summoning whatever strength she had left. Suddenly, an idea sparked in her mind. "Jake." She turned to him, eyes wide with renewed determination. "We can use it. The light can drive them away." There was knowledge painted in the depths of fear. It was a chance. But she knew they needed to be brave alone. They were prey. Together, they could be predators. Taking a defensive stance, Sarah lifted the lantern. "Stay close," she commanded, although her voice quaked. Jake nodded, bracing himself, his small form shaking, but her fire ignited some courage in him too. They raised the lantern and moved forward, the warm glow pushing back a few stretching shadows. "Get back," Sarah shouted. She lunged forward, swinging the light towards the advancing creatures. The instant the lantern illuminated them fully, shrieks erupted, a discordant chorus of despair that echoed through the night. "Light burns! Light burns!" they screeched, retreating into the grasp of darkness. The clearing became a battleground, flickering light against oppressive shadows. It was a moment etched in fear, but also in raw potential. "Keep moving," Jake called, his voice firm as they advanced together, illuminating the path ahead. Shadows shrank away, but not all. The massive gargoyle-like figure lumbered forward, angry and terrifying, blockading their escape. "You think this will save you?" It thundered, its monstrous form distorted and grotesque, gearing up for one last assault. Just then, the air crackled, and the stones flickered with a strange energy, the ground vibrating beneath their feet. "What is happening?" Jake yelled, glancing around as energies of fear and defiance coiled in the air. Maybe Sarah swallowed hard, eyes darting. "Maybe we can awaken whatever is trapped here." With the fiery courage wedged inside her heart, she shouted, "Our fears don't own us." The lantern glowed brighter as she raised it above her head, casting rippling waves of light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "You cannot take what is ours," she cried, stepping boldly towards the creature. "We are not your puppets." As if fueled by her words, a blinding light emitted from the lantern, pushing back the shadows, revealing their twisted forms in agonizing clarity. Screams erupted. The mocking laughter was stripped away, and the tension in the air pulsed with an otherworldly rhythm. "Now," Sarah yelled, stepping entirely forward, pulling Jake into the light with her eye. In that moment, the trees began to sway, and the shadows writhed against the intensity of their defiance. The ground beneath their feet shivered as new life awoke beneath the ancient stones. A bright brilliance erupted, vines and roots intertwined, anchoring their resolve to the earth. Light erupted from the lantern, filling the clearing, so pure and radiant it swallowed the creatures whole. They screeched one final wail, their forms dissolving into dust, scattering like fallen leaves in the wind. The world exhaled around them, the weight of horrors lifting as the dawn swept away night as shroud. They stood in silence, breaths mingling with a warm glow embracing them. Did we win?" Jake's voice cracked, disbelief flickering in his eyes. "Yeah," Sarah murmured, relief flooding her as she collapsed into her brother. "We did." As the sun crested over the horizon, light poured into their world, golden and healing. The cabin behind them crumbled into dust. The forest began to hum a peaceful tune, and shadows receded into mere echoes of the nightmarish past. Hand in hand, Sarah and Jake stepped into the morning, heartbeats steady against the bright warmth. "We're going home," she said simply, holding his small hand tight as they began to walk away. "Do you think it'll all be okay?" Jake asked, peering back at the remnants of fear. "It will be. We'll always have each other." As they broke through the tree-line, the sun bathed their faces, and the shadows that haunted their summer vacation melted into memories, whispering tales of triumph over terror. They lived to tell their story, a powerful bond forged through fear, now shimmering bright under the awakening sky. Together, they faced the future feeling whole, knowing they were stronger than the nightmares that lingered only in distant corners of their minds. But the adventure wasn't ending yet. A flicker in the distance, a feeling in the air, adventures still awaited them. Let us go. There's a whole world out there, Sarah exclaimed, urgency kindling within her. The air crackled with promise, the horizon beckoning them forward. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss the next exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to show your support and feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us keep this amazing community alive.